Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. I'm here with my good friend Sherrise Pond from Anthemis. How are you doing?
Hi, Sydney. I'm doing well. I'm having a great day so far. Thank you for having me.
So, Sherrise is a principal level at a growth stage fund, and I am so excited to get to dive in with her to talk about her experiences and her journey. And I know that you come from a different kind of background, not necessarily from VC to begin with.
Mhm.
And we also got to be in the same cohort for All Raise, so that's
Yes,
very fun. And we're going to talk a
that
little
has
bit
been
about
amazing.
what that brought us as well. I would love to hear about your experiences thus far. So. Please start by telling us a little bit about the fund and how you got into venture from your very interesting background.
Oh goodness. Okay. I don't know which one to start in. Maybe I'll start with Anthemis, what Anthemis does, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself. So Anthemis started back in 2008, 2010 with the idea of transforming the financial services landscape and being a catalyst to democratize access to financial services and products. And we've been doing that throughout the different products and funds that we have that Anthemis has launched, and it's really been a great building up an ecosystem around financial services as well, and really a great catalyst for ensuring that we're working with innovative companies that are finding ways to make financial products and services useful, resilient, accessible, transparent. And that was important to me. That thesis was important to me when I joined, because now I'll launch into how I got to Anthemis.
Yeah.
I have a pretty varied background. I've always been in finance in some way, but in different areas. So I first started out in undergrad with a job in investment banking. I worked at Citigroup in their municipal securities department. So my role there was to structure bond transactions for hospitals and healthcare systems. I was in the healthcare group, but we had other groups that worked with airports or municipalities, any tax exempt entity. We would help them raise bonds and raise money through debt. And that was a very interesting, typical analyst experience, working lots of late nights. So
Yep.
I knew that could not I could not sustain that for the rest of my life, and I wanted to do something different. And I had always been interested in working abroad. So I actually in my whenever I actually had free time at night during when I was an analyst, which didn't come until like year three
No, for
of
sure.
working there. I actually started taking classes at NYU near City's office in their they call it their continuing it's like a continuing education program. And I was really interested in going abroad and doing work internationally. So I took classes in their global affairs department. And that's when I started learning about microfinance. And through that, I saw the link to the work that I was doing. We were at Citi, we were issuing large loans, hundreds of millions of dollars of loans, and microfinance issues small loans to people most at that time, mostly in developing countries. It's since come to the US, but or to developed countries. But and so I saw a potential opportunity for me to leave banking and do that abroad. And that linked with my goals of wanting to impact financial services in some way and democratize access to services and products. So that's where my link to Anthemis' thesis really came early on in my career.
Yeah.
So I actually went abroad to work with Kiva for two tours with them, I'll call it. One in Senegal, one in Peru. I was 6 months in Senegal, 6 months
Oh,
in
that's
Peru,
amazing.
working with their microfinance partners on the ground, and as being a link between Kiva and the MFI, and just ensuring that the microfinance institution on the ground were that they were, they had proper practices, and that they were doing the right thing, right? Um, then I actually so I was in Peru first, then I went to Senegal, then I actually hopped back over to Latin America and moved to Bogota, Colombia, to work still in not in microfinance, but as in the financial department of an educational um organization down there. So, like I said, I've always been in finance, but
Yeah.
just in different ways. And I ended up my role in Bogota was meant to be 11 months. It was a short-term fellowship, but I fell in love with the country, with the organization I was working with the company, with the impact that they were having in the community.
Yes.
And I was doing, cost accounting analyses and, helping them do budgets and things like that. But I really loved the experience. So they helped me extend my visa. They gave me another contract. So I ended up living in and working in Colombia for 5 years.
Hmm.
From there, I came back to the United States, received my MBA, and then, sorry, path to BC. So it's a winding road, like I mentioned. I went back into investment banking for a little bit. I worked at Credit Suisse doing M&A with them because I wanted to get back into that deal execution mode, knowing that I was going to enter into VC. So it was when I was at Credit Suisse doing buy side, sell side deals, some SPACs, things like that. I got to know the one of the founding GPs of the founding partners of Anthemis,
Right.
and that's when the process,
Yes.
got started. And like I said, I always had I tried to build a career really focused on impact and doing good while being financially prosperous as well. And I felt like Anthemis was a good combination of that for me
Oh,
personally.
absolutely. And the lead that you guys are taking in the growth stage arena is completely different. So in terms of how you are doing your first set of underwriting as a VC, as a principal, what kind of things did you learn that particularly may have surprised you, or you were like, "Oh, okay, this is a little different than what I expected." And I'm gonna give this to you. A lot of people go a lot of missing information than I'm used to. But for you, what kind of things did you particularly experience if you remember kind of back to your first year?
Yeah, well, coming from banking, where when we do, whether you're on the buy side or sell side, data rooms are so
Thorough.
extensive and thorough,
Yes.
right? So yes, I second the missing information. But it's more about I felt that the biggest change for me, in banking, you're more like selling a service, right?
Right.
And in VC, you're more forming an opinion around a trend or an industry or something that probably hasn't really come to fruition yet.
That interesting.
Since
Yes.
you're doing early stage and even growth stage as well, right? And you're still waiting to see it really do really well. So for me, the major transition was shifting that mindset from saying I'm not the decision maker here. I'm just selling a service and someone else is making a decision on the banking side of things to saying,
Ah,
okay, I really need to get smart in this industry. I really need to
yeah.
form an opinion about this. I really need to build my networks around this space as well so I can speak to other people that are smarter than me on this.
Right.
Bring them into the discussions as well. And it's been more of a it's been more of a team effort versus banking where you keep your head down, you do your job, you output the model in the presentation, but there's a lot more in VC around just high level thinking around where do you think something can go, what are the risks related to it, your gut feeling on it too, but you're also thinking about how you can mitigate those risks, and being more confident in being able to step into that unknown, right?
Ah, absolutely.
So I think that was the biggest shift for me. And but that also goes along with the missing information too. You have to fill in the gaps where you can.
And that could make a lot of, especially, people who are going into VC for the first time, having a very extensive career before, going like, what am I looking at? What is
Yeah.
this? Why are you giving this to me? And where is the rest? And
Where's
so,
the rest? Exactly.
and then especially when it comes to earlier and earlier stages, you have even less information because they haven't done as much. And
Yeah.
so, how do you feel about when it comes to early stage versus growth stage, and what kind of your everyday would have looked like differently as a principal if you had been in an early stage company coming
Yeah.
from your background versus if you were at a growth stage company?
Well, I will say, just to clarify, and I didn't mention this when I was giving the background about Anthemis, we are an early stage investor as well. So we've invested in over 200 companies so far since our inception. And most of them have been pre-seed C, Series A. And then we did venture into venture growth doing Series B, C, and some even pre-IPO deals a couple of years ago. So I feel like I've been able to see it all. And yes, you're right. The information that you have available to you at the growth stage, you much more financial information. So if you're someone coming into VC and you're more comfortable with the modeling, you're more comfortable with the quant
Mhm.
aspect of it, and you feel like you need that to make a decision on doing a transaction, then yes, venture growth or growth stage
Mhm.
is probably better for you. And what I mean by venture growth is, well, how we define it, Series
Yeah.
B, C. Some people define growth as like that middle stage between VC and private equity, right? So if you're that person that is a little more comfortable making decisions with the financials in hand, and with at least 3 to 5 years of historicals, and then you can project, you can project better with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yes, the early stage is a lot of understanding the market, understanding the potential for the growth of the space. Who are the other competitors, both early and late, that have already done this? What is this founder doing differently? And also, I think the most important thing is, who do you want to work with this founder? Like
Yeah.
if you guys are in the trenches, things are not going well, and you have to be up super late on a Friday night working with this person, like how would you feel about that? And is it someone that you feel like you can that can execute well too, and
Yeah.
won't give up when things
That is a
if things go
great question. That's a fantastic reflection that I think everybody should be asking themselves, right? Because it's true, like in venture, you have such long hours, regardless of what you're doing, and also usually regardless of your title. You're either going to be fundraising or executing, right?
Mhm.
And so like after
Exactly.
oftentimes, this is how we first met, is that oftentimes after your 9 to 5, you would go to another event and then
Yes,
you would come home at maybe like 10 or 11 and you would only have enough energy to maybe eat an orange. That's how
yes,
I did it. And then the next morning you go to a breakfast event before
exactly.
your emails kind of come in, right? Because your breakfast events in New York usually start at like 7:30 or 8. And
Hmm.
then you're like, okay, I need to get there right beforehand so that I can maybe have to leave at a certain time in order to get to my next thing, right? And so
Add
you
in potentially going to conferences as
yes,
well, and then your
yes,
whole
that's
week
right.
is taken
Yes.
up with travel and being in
Right,
the
because you
conference
have to
all day.
represent your fund.
Hmm.
If you are one of the only ones going, or there are several conferences or events at the same week, then you're
Hmm.
gonna have to like, kind of divide and conquer, which is so true. So when you're at the conferences, you can have an out of office, but you also like know that they're good, like they'll get back to you. And
Yes.
they'll get back to you. When your founders are like in need, you'll get back to them, you know? And so yeah, so I know that, some of your favorite hobbies are Hapkido and salsa dancing. I was wondering, how do you find your work-life balance?
You know what's so interesting about that is when I was living in Bogota, Colombia, I felt like
Huh?
I had way more work-life balance than
Really?
I do
Okay.
here in the US, regardless of what job I'm doing here. But I just feel like I don't know, the American like view of working and capitalism is so ingrained in us that it's hard for us to shut down, right?
True.
Anthemis actually started in Europe. So a lot of my colleagues are in London or in Portugal and Switzerland. And I find myself admiring them and jealous of them because you can really see that they have a better hold over work-life balance, right? And making sure that they're carving out time for their families, for vacation, for downtime, for charity work, things like that. And I feel like I was way more active in Colombia because my colleagues there also shut down at uh, like 5 or 5:30. I would stay until 7, and then I would go to my Hapkido classes after that, and then get home at like 11 o'clock. Um, and or like salsa dancing as well in the evenings. I did a lot I did a lot of activities like
In
hiking,
great
Colombia as
shape. Oh my
well.
gosh.
It was beautiful, and I'm trying to get back into that. I actually moved back to New York shortly before COVID hit. And
Oh,
that, so I was working
wow.
for Credit Suisse just a
Okay.
couple of months before COVID hit. So I'm like tr now I'm still trying to get back into that flow of what does work-life balance look like because we didn't really have that liberty,
Right.
during the pandemic.
Right.
So I do I was actually just talking to coworkers yesterday about getting the team to, I don't know, maybe dance around the office a little bit and show us
Fun.
some salsa moves. But but yeah, I find that what I've gotten really into here now, being back in New York, is I really love the theater, so I try to see plays as much as possible. I went to the museum twice over the weekend to the Whitney to see exhibits there. I find like that those type of activities are things that I like to do to just continue to develop, my mind, see what else is going on out there, going out there culturally. And yes, but I do miss Hapkido. I every time I pass a martial arts studio, I'm like, I'm gonna pop my head in and see if I can join.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be so funny. And I know that, in addition to your heavy workload, you also are, take on leadership positions like Black women in VC, and we do all raise. And I was wondering, in terms of those commitments, they're obviously very important to you and your values. And I love that they exist. I wish they existed everywhere in the world, but
Yeah.
they exist for us right now, and we should be grateful for that because when we first started in our careers, when we first graduated school, these things were not a thing.
Yeah.
They did not exist, and I'm very excited for the new generation that these things are here. Would love to learn a little bit about, your involvement with them, and what was your favorite event with these organizations that you can remember in the past couple of years that particularly resonated with you?
Well, I always give credit to it, well, before I jump into that, I will say I am internally grateful to these organizations as well because
Yeah.
and it's not just Black VC or Black women in VC or all raised, but there's women in fintech or organizations like that specific to my industry that have been great too to meet, or women in climate, right? I love those type of events and it's so amazing to see the numbers continuing to grow at these events. So, kudos to the VC funds that are hiring, more diverse investors, and also it allows us to be in the room with founders of diverse backgrounds, actually that who probably would not have been able to get access to
Yeah.
VCs, right?
Yeah.
So I think those organizations are great for those reasons um, 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 to have more people on, diversity on both the capital allocation side and the entrepreneurship side. And we're actually starting to see that more in Europe as well. So I hope that Europe can have access to these types of events. There's an organization called Women in VC Europe that Anthemis has supported over the past couple of years. Actually started by Anthemis employees, and it's great to see that
Wow.
grow from. Oh gosh, I think their first conference, they always do it in Paris. Their first conference started with, I think, 100 women, 150 women, has grown to 250.
Oh,
Don't quote me on those numbers, but yeah, it's definitely grown. And I connected with a woman in Bulgaria who's trying to create an entrepreneurship ecosystem for female founders out there as well. So um the momentum is definitely there and I love it. For me, I always like to give a nod to Black VC because that's how I met Eamon Iakis. That's how I met the one of the co-founding GP of Anthemis. They
wow.
were back in 2020. They were doing a series of panels for people that wanted to enter into VC. So people from all
Mm,
different backgrounds, but and it was just each panel had a different topics on like raising a fund, conducting due diligence, being on a board, being a sector specific VC, being a generalist VC.
yeah.
And Amy came and spoke about being a sector specific VC
Mm,
since Anthemis has really played in the financial services and fintech sector.
yeah.
And I really connected with her background, and she had done banking as well. She had done the Peace Corps, And so I just reached out and said, hey, I would love to chat with you about your career progression and how you went from being at a large bank to now running your own fund. And, just really went from there through, the interview process. And it just happened, just so happened that they were looking for someone with my background for a specific role as well. And so, and I honestly, I don't think I would have known her or met her if it hadn't been for an organization like Black VC doing, bringing in people like that to speak about their experiences.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like you've had, you hear all the time that networking is so important in VC, but sometimes our networks can be so limited to just
Yeah.
the schools that we went to or the communities that we come from, right? And
Yeah.
for certain types of people, that can be even more limited, right? So,
Yes. True. I
um,
only network at polo matches, so.
right, exactly. Right? So so yeah, that's always been appreciative to them for organizing those
Oh,
panels.
great. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Whenever I can, if I have other things going on, if I can possibly move it and there's like a women in VC or something that is very specific and very resonating to my values, and if
Yeah.
there's something that's going on, a project or initiative, I would try to rearrange it to make it and
Absolutely.
to show up. You got to show up for the things that are important to you.
Absolutely. And that's why I also really like the All Raise program that we're doing, focused
Yeah.
on people at the principal
Yes.
level,
Yes.
because I think that's an important part of your career where you're trying to decide, where do I go from here? What's the progression look like? Or am I interested in something else outside of VC? Am I interested in entrepreneurship? And I think it's great to have that community of women that we can speak to. We
Yes.
can communicate about those different ideas. And also, Always has a great program for principals called VC Champions, that connects you with mentors that are GPs at their respective firms. So I think that's great
I want
as
to ask
well.
you about this. Okay, so my whole VC career, I always felt like I wanted a mentor, and then over time, couldn't find one. Then
Mm.
over time, before I got to New York, sorry, couldn't find one. I have gotten this response, kind of being like, "Aren't you like the age where you should be the mentor?"
Oh,
You know what I mean? So having a
okay.
principals cohort was so special. And the program that you just mentioned about champions, like you should always be able to find someone, and it does not really matter your age, but it does matter in terms of their levels of experiences, who's
Exactly.
going to champion for you, because there aren't enough women in new male-dominated industries that champion each other.
Hmm.
And having these programs be official programs and having these be out there, it really does mean something and it brings something new to the table, I feel.
Hmm. Absolutely. And to your first point, that just sounds like ageism, and that's something I think we need to tackle in the VC industry as well. Right?
Oh,
It doesn't just need to be the recent undergrads that are making an impact in the VC space.
yes,
Right?
bring me impact.
We are we are still young and vibrant and can can add value.
That's right.
So, but I really do appreciate that program because, like you said, it's not always easy to find a mentor. And my understanding of mentorship is that it actually needs to be something that's a little more organic, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes they say these forced mentorship programs don't always work. But what I like about the All Raise one is that the champions aren't being forced into it. They're opting in to it,
Yeah.
right? They
That's
want to be.
yeah.
It's
You
not like
said you wanted to do this.
exactly, right? And the ones that I've worked with this year have been in the program for a couple of years now, right? So
Okay.
they are true champions, they are true allies, a mix of men and women,
Hmm.
and that has been important to me as well because I've been able to meet. I'm based in New York, but I've been able to meet GPs and funds in SF and in other cities that I where I wouldn't normally have access to them because I'm not physically there. I'm not physically in SF going to events like you said, you're going
Yeah.
to every night. So I'm not just going to run into them naturally. And
Right.
so I'm really appreciative to All Raise for that opportunity as well.
I love that. And speaking of events, there is something like that I had to learn the hard way because I didn't come from a very big ecosystem, right? Where there's a very big difference in VC when you're doing a direct like email or text follow up with someone versus if you just re-ran into them at an
Hmm.
event or at a program that you're in or something because it has that like serendipitous kind of feeling and it is very very different because you're able to grow that bond a lot stronger when you're in these innovation hubs and also thank God that Allraise is has a New York chapter that is so big and strong and vibrant because
Hmm.
otherwise you wouldn't have enough people to do the program.
Yeah.
And then how would you do it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's and I think there are people in or VCs that are starting to realize you don't just have to be in New York, in LA, in
True.
SF, right?
Yeah.
So it's good. I'm also excited about seeing these other hubs in other cities pop up as well. And we'll love to see All Raise and other organizations like that be able to support.
Yes, absolutely. I think I've mentioned this to you before at one of our events where whenever I go on a trip, like I usually like go just wherever and whenever, I try and meet up for coffee with
Mhm.
other women in BC. And I just like see in like the air table that we both have and just be like, hey, do you want to meet up? Do you want to go
Yeah.
grab lunch? And so everywhere from like Nashville all the way to Rome, I have met up with people and got to learn about the
Amazing.
ecosystems.
Amazing. And that's the best way to do it. I find that some of the people that some of the investors that I have had the greatest rapport with, like you said, are people that I would randomly run into at different events. Like, I'll see them at or two different climate events. And I'm like, okay, let's chat, let's set up recurring calls, let's get to know each other more. And it's getting to know people outside of what their thesis is, what's
Yeah.
their typical check size, what stages do they invest in, but it's more getting to know them as a person as well, which has
Yes.
been a lot of fun on this journey too.
One of the first female GPs that I like really desperately wanted to talk to, she's out in Boston, and
Mhm.
she gave me all of these like really interesting tips. And she was like, as I was like raising, coming up in my VC career, I would have these regular calls. I would have these like updates for people that I wanted to make sure was in my circle,
Mhm.
regardless like of how relevant it is to them at the moment. But I just want them to know what I'm doing, what I'm working on, what I'm up to. And I was like, what if I don't have good enough things to say? That's okay. The point is that they don't have to feel pressure to ever respond back. And then the other part was what you mentioned, which was like you want to find out what they're interested in outside of their investment thesis. Because your investment thesis could be just given to you. It is always
Mhm.
been given to me. So it's,
Exactly.
it's just given to you. It's not because you chose it, it's because opportunity and timing and everything happened to be, and you just happened to be there too, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily because you're like, I've tried for this my whole life.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Particular
exactly what I
thesis.
want to do. Yeah.
And so then remembering all of these things about what makes them a well-rounded person, she used to
Mhm.
have an Excel to like write this all in.
Go down.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
People are definitely keeping this information in CRMs, Airtable, Affinity. Yes.
They have a subscription.
Personal CRMs. Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that we get to be adding to a part of this. So one last thing was wanting to see how you view the world of investment and VC, especially in on the impact side in the future.
Oh, wow.
And
I,
impact doesn't have to be like impact investment. It just could be like, oh,
yeah, yeah. I think there are so many opportunities for us to still, um, for innovative entrepreneurs to still tackle and for investors to participate in and really push forward as well. What I really do like about Anthemis is how Anthemis thinks about it is that it's not just financial services, right? We moved into a view of embedded finance as
yeah.
well a couple of years ago, and that has allowed us to broaden our reach of potential investments by investing in companies across any sector that is using a financial service or product to deliver their model or selling into financial
Mhm.
institutions.
Yeah.
And that has been really we focused on the embedded finance thesis that allowed for us to invest in companies across different sectors
Mhm.
that were either embedding financial services and products into their business model or selling into financial institutions.
Mm,
But now we're seeing this opportunity for financial services to become even more invisible, right? And we're calling it invisible finance. And it's a point where, and I think it's also tied with this new AI boom where finances financial services are going to become more predictive, more intuitive and solve customer pain points
mhm,
without without them without these without the barriers of them having to, log into so many different apps all at once, right? It's all going to just be running in the background, more predictive, um more customized to different solutions. And we see that being able to be used in so many different sectors, including climate, healthcare, supply chain and logistics, education. And so I'm excited about that, about the way that we digitize financial services, have made it so much more accessible, and are now layering on AI into that as well to
yeah.
make it more predictive and customizable. Um, and Anthemis' thesis allows us to look not just at traditional financial services, but across so many different sectors. So I'm excited about that potential for impact as
Yeah.
well. Um, and yeah, I'm trying to think if there's more. I think I may leave it there, but um, there are a couple of areas that I'm, particularly excited about. A little nervous, but also excited about, right? Like we've been looking a lot at the intersection of climate with fintech and insurtech, and now with this AI boom, that's where we all know that it uses up AI uses up a lot of energy, a lot of water. It may actually negatively affect the advancements we've made on the
Mm,
climate side. I'm excited to see
yeah.
where hopefully AI can solve its own problems that it's creating. And I've already started seeing companies, pre-seed companies coming out of accelerators that are trying to find new solutions to helping us helping us control the energy use that AI is requiring. And so I'm excited about those opportunities. I think that there are also I've seen some really interesting companies on the elder care side of things too. All right, we've talked a lot about the transition of wealth from boomers to millennials and Gen Zers, but
Yep.
we've seen a lot of interesting solutions for the older generations as well, which I think should not be ignored, right? And whether it's a combination of solutions that they use or solutions that they use with their younger family members,
Mm.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for impact there too. So so yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I think there's a
I
lot
love
a,
it.
a lot that we can do across
Yeah,
different sectors.
I love it. And I love that, your focus helps eventually break down barriers left and right and everywhere because providing that gives more different people access to the
Yeah.
things that they didn't have before. So absolutely. I think that that's wonderful.
And I think that's something that's always been underlying for what Anthemis has tried to achieve. And so there's, hopefully a lot more that we'll be able to do in 2025. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I love what you're working on. So thank you so much, Sherrise, for coming on as a guest to another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. It was so great to have you.
Oh, this has been great. So great seeing you, Sydney. Take care.